All right, let's dive straight in. We're plunging into Kings Canyon National Park today. It's really one of the true jewels of California's Sierra Nevada.
Yeah, absolutely. And our source material, it's this really comprehensive report. Covers, well, pretty much everything. The natural heritage, the deep history, even what it's like to visit.
And our goal with this deep dive, we want to slice through all that info, pull out the really essential stuff, and basically give you a shortcut to understanding this incredible place.
Think of it like your personal guide. We'll
Yeah.
take you from, its ancient foundations, these massive geological forces, all the way to some of its hidden gems.
Exactly. We're going to touch on the geology, obviously, the human history stretching back thousands of years,
Mhm.
the conservation battles, which were pretty intense, some surprising things about the giant sequoias, too.
Oh, yeah.
And like you said, we'll even spill some of the park's best-kept secrets for anyone thinking about actually going there.
Right, because the sources really show this isn't just a static picture. It's dynamic. You've got nature, human impact, and this constant evolution. It's actively managed.
Okay, so before we get lost in the granite or the giant trees, let's just, set the scene. Where is Kings Canyon exactly, and how did the park itself come about?
So geographically, you're looking at East Central California, high up in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Right.
And what's really key is that it's right next door to Sequoia National Park. They're actually run together, administered as one unit.
Ah, okay, so it's like one big protected area.
Pretty much. Creates this massive, jointly managed wilderness. And then maybe 40 miles or so northwest, you've got Yosemite. So it's all part of this significant conservation network.
And establishing the park itself, that wasn't just a one-shot deal, was it? It has a bit of a history.
Oh, absolutely. It's got layers. Kings Canyon National Park, the one we know now, was officially created by Congress on May 4th, 1940.
Okay, 1940.
But, and this is important, that act actually absorbed a much older, smaller park, General Grant National Park. That one dates all the way back to 1890.
1890. Wow, so the first step was much earlier and more focused.
Exactly. The original General Grant Park, its whole purpose was pretty specific, just protect the General Grant tree itself and, the sequoias right around it in Grant Grove.
Why? What was the threat back then?
Logging. It was rampant in the late 19th century, so this was a direct move to save those iconic trees from being cut down.
Gotcha. Save the biggest ones first. Makes sense.
Kind of a strategic move, yeah.
Yeah.
So the 1940 Act basically expanded massively around that original core, bringing the total size up to the current 722 square miles. That's about 1,870 square kilometers.
And the joint administration with Sequoia started when?
That kicked in around World War II. They realized, hey, this is really one big connected ecosystem. It makes sense to manage it together.
So the takeaway for you listening is this park boundary isn't just some random line. It's part of this huge, intentionally protected region. And its story, going from saving one tree to saving these vast canyons, really shows how conservation thinking grew in the U.S. It wasn't easy.
No, it was definitely a fight.
Prepare to feel very small. Let's dive into the geology, the deep time. How was this landscape actually sculpted? We're talking hundreds of millions of years here.
Well, the foundation, the bedrock itself, is mostly granitic rock. Think granite, diorite, monzonite, common across the Sierra Nevada.
And that didn't form on the surface, right?
No, no. This stuff solidified way down deep underground. It came from molten rock, magma that was generated by tectonic plates colliding, subduction.
Okay, so giant plates crashing, melting rock deep down, cooling super slowly.
Exactly. Miles below what was the surface back then. Then, over immense stretches of time, you get uplift, erosion strips away the stuff on top, and bam, there's the granite.
But that's just the base layer. The canyon itself has these distinct layers we see.
It does. Those really sheer cliffs you often see, that's typically Marini sandstone. It's about 400 million years old.
Okay.
And below that, you've got Carmichael sandstone, which is even older, maybe 440 million years. And it's softer.
And there's something between them.
Yeah, a thin layer of purple mudstone. And these layers tell a story about ancient environments. The Carmichael was likely laid down in a shallow sea. The mudstone marks a transition. And then the Marini, that probably formed from huge inland sand dunes, maybe with rivers cutting through.
So how does a river carve such a massive canyon through that kind of rock? It seems impossible.
It's slow but relentless, so erosion works along these natural cracks, vertical joints, in the harder Marini sandstone on top.
Right.
But the key is the softer Carmichael layer underneath erodes faster, so it gets undercut.
Like pulling the bottom Jenga blocks out.
Exactly. The harder rock on top becomes unstable, collapses, the river carries the debris away, and repeat that for 400 million years.
Yeah.
You get a very wide, deep canyon.
Mind-boggling. What about glaciers? They carve mountains, too.
Oh, for sure. They played a huge role, especially up high, carving out those classic U-shaped valleys, scouring out basins for lakes. The Darwin Glacier is one example within the park system.
But that ice sculpting isn't quite the same today.
And this is where the ancient past slams into the present. Across the whole Sierra Nevada, glaciers have shrunk by about 55% just in the last century.
55%? Wow.
Yeah, it's a really stark, frankly alarming indicator of how fast our climate is changing things now. Things that took millions of years to form are being altered incredibly rapidly.
That's a powerful contrast. Beyond the huge cliffs and shrinking glaciers, what other geological stuff is going on?
Well, the water system is incredible. Thousands of lakes, ponds, streams, rivers, they form these really vital watersheds. Super important water source for California's Central Valley agriculture.
And I've heard the rivers have a distinct color.
They often do, yeah. The striking, deep blue-green, especially where the water flows near or over the granite boulders. It's beautiful.
And there's stuff underground, too. Caves.
Absolutely. Over 200 caves are protected within the parks. And these aren't just simple holes, they're complex systems. You find rare minerals, fossils from the Pleistocene, Ice Age critters, and even unique animals adapted to total darkness.
Cool.
You also see those smooth, rounded granite domes on the surface. That's from long-term weathering. Oh, and that reddish color you sometimes see in the sandstone.
Yeah.
The sources suggest it's from iron-rich dust that blew in ages ago and got kind of cemented onto the rock by fungi.
So the big picture on geology, Kings Canyon is like this living lab of deep time, right?
Yeah.
Millions of years of processes. But the scary part is how forces like climate change are rewriting the ending right now, those shrinking glaciers. That directly connects to your water supply, ancient geology, current reality.
Well put.
Okay, moving from rocks and water to life.
Yeah.
How does this incredibly dramatic landscape support so much biodiversity? It seems like it would be tough living.
It's all about the elevation gradient. You go from hot, dry foothills way up to freezing alpine peaks. That creates this huge range of habitats, like stack ecosystems.
Which means tons of different plants and animals, I guess.
Exactly. The report lists over 1,300 native plant species. Some are unique, like the Kaweah monkeyflower, but the undisputed stars, obviously, are the giant sequoias, Sequoiadendron giganteum.
The biggest living things on Earth, basically.
Among the largest and oldest, yeah. And Kings Canyon has a very famous one.
The General Grant tree.
That's the one. It's actually the second largest sequoia by volume in the world. But, fun fact, it holds the record for the largest base diameter of any tree globally.
No way. Really?
Yep. And since 1926, it's been the official nation's Christmas tree. We used to think it was over 2,000 years old, but recent estimates put it closer to still ancient, 1,650 years.
Still pretty old. And the biggest tree overall, the General Sherman, that's nearby too.
Yeah, it's in Sequoia National Park, but part of the same combined park complex.
And the relationship between these giants and fire, that's super important, isn't it?
Oh, critically important. Fire is natural and necessary for sequoias. Their cones actually need the heat from a fire to pop open and release seeds. And fire clears out competing plants on the forest floor, prepares the soil.
Yeah.
It's essential for new seedlings to sprout. The problem was, for decades, humans put out all the fires because, buildings and stuff were nearby.
Right, protect the structures.
Exactly. But that suppression actually hurt the sequoias' ability to reproduce. So park managers now are actively trying to bring fire back safely using prescribed burns.
Makes sense. What about animal life? Lots of critters running around.
Oh, yeah. Nearly 300 native animal species. Everything from tiny alpine chipmunks up high to black bears pretty much throughout. But where they live really depends on the elevation zone.
Okay, walk us through those zones quickly. Start low.
Right down in the foothills. Hot, dry summers, mild winters. You get oak woodlands, chaparral, thick stuff along the rivers, sycamores, willows, animals. Think gray fox, bobcat, black bear, California quail, even California newts.
Okay, moving up into the montane zone, mid-elevations.
Yep. That's where you find the classic mixed forests, pine, incense cedar, fir, and those scattered sequoia groves. Higher up in montane, it becomes more red fir and lodgepole pine. Lots of life here. Chickarees, gray squirrels, mule deer, black bears again, mountain lions.
Mountain lions, wow.
Yeah. Birds like western tanagers, pileated woodpeckers, even mountain king snakes.
And way up top, the really high country.
That's the subalpine and alpine zones. Lots of lakes, meadows, exposed granite. Food's scarcer up there, so fewer mammals. But you might see marmots, pikas, those cute little rock rabbit things.
Love pikas.
Me too! And white-tailed jackrabbits. Birds include the really smart Clark's nutcracker, mountain bluebirds, rosy finches.
And the park is actively working to help some species that are struggling.
Definitely. There are major conservation efforts for endangered species like the mountain yellow-legged frog and the Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep. The bighorn recovery is pretty intensive.
I read something about helicopters. That sounds dramatic.
It is. It involves a lot of research, tracking, and sometimes actually capturing and moving sheep to start new herds or boost existing ones. And yeah, they sometimes use helicopters for that, carefully planned during the off-season, like October or winter months, using specific flight paths to minimize disturbance.
It really highlights how managing this park is this constant balancing act. Past actions, like stopping fires, created problems. Current issues like climate change are hitting hard, especially up high. And saving species sometimes takes these really complex, hands-on actions.
It's a huge ongoing effort.
No, it's easy to just focus on the nature, but this place has a deep human history too, going back way before Europeans arrived.
Absolutely. These lands were ancestral homelands for thousands of years. Estimates are around 6,000 to 7,000 years. Tribes like the Mono or Monash, Yokuts, Tubatulabal, Paiute, Western Shoshone, they were the original stewards here.
And they lived sustainably for all that time.
They had this incredibly deep, sophisticated knowledge of the land. They hunted deer, elk, smaller game, even stuff like larval wasps, apparently, gathered acorns, berries, nuts, seeds, fished. They even practiced some small-scale agriculture, like growing tobacco. It was all about balance and understanding the ecosystem.
But European arrival changed everything.
Tragically, yes. The sources mention a smallpox epidemic in 1862 that just devastated the Monoc people. And it wasn't just the loss of life, it was this profound loss of traditional ecological knowledge built up over centuries. Just heartbreaking.
Then came the explorers and exploiters.
Right. You had early Spanish explorers like Gabriel Moraga naming the Kings River in 1805. Jedediah Smith came through in 1827. But the mid-1800s brought resource extraction in a big way. Logging started picking up in the 1860s.
And then they went after the sequoias.
They did. The first sawmills appeared around 1862. The Converse Basin, which once held maybe the largest sequoia grove anywhere, was almost completely logged out. They cut these giants for lumber, fence posts, shingles. It's hard to imagine.
And logging wasn't the only pressure.
No, grazing was huge, too. Cattlemen like Hale Tharp used the giant forest area for pasture in the 1860s, and sheep owners were actually big opponents of creating the park initially because they didn't want to lose their grazing lands. Overgrazing was a major problem for a long time.
So, amidst all this exploitation, how did the idea of preservation even start?
That's where figures like John Muir come in. He's absolutely central to this story. He visited Kings River Canyon in 1875 and then came back in 1891 right after Sequoia National Park was created.
And he felt sequoia wasn't enough.
Exactly. He thought sequoia was great for protecting some sequoias, but he felt it missed the really spectacular stuff Mount Whitney and especially the incredible valleys of the Kings and Kern Rivers.
Which led him to write about it.
Passionately. His 1891 article, Arrival of the Yosemite, was a landmark. He didn't just say Kings Canyon was beautiful, he called it a yet grander valley than Yosemite. He described its scale 10 miles long, half-mile wide, walls up to 5,000 feet. He painted this picture of the Crystal River, flowery meadows and groves.
But it wasn't just pretty writing, was it? It was an argument.
Absolutely. He directly contrasted that beauty with the destructive tendencies he saw, especially the ruthless logging of the sequoias. His message was clear. We need another great national park to save this place. His words were incredibly powerful and fueled the conservation movement for decades.
But getting that park created took a long time.
Oh, yeah, it was incremental. You had General Grant National Park in 1890, just protecting the tree. A bigger plan for a Roosevelt National Park failed in the 1920s. Infrastructure, like the General's Highway, finished in 35, helped connect things. Finally, in 1940, under FDR, Kings Canyon National Park was created, absorbing the old General Grant area and adding huge swaths of land.
This history really shows that preservation isn't guaranteed. It's often a long, hard fight against economic interests, driven by passionate people like Muir and built piece by piece. Understanding that struggle makes you appreciate the park even more, I think.
Definitely. It wasn't just handed over.
Okay, so we know how it formed, how it was saved. Let's talk about actually visiting. What are the absolute must-do things when you get there?
Well, you absolutely have to start with the General Grant tree in Grant Grove. It's iconic. Remember, second largest volume, largest base diameter, nation's Christmas tree.
And getting to it is easy.
Super easy. There's a paved 13-mile loop trail, very accessible, and right there you also see the historic Gamlin cabin and the fallen monarch.
The walk-through tree.
That's the one. A giant down sequoia. You can literally walk inside. It's pretty cool. Definitely a must-do.
Okay, what other major areas should people hit?
You need to drive down Highway 180 into Cedar Grove. The sources call it a hidden gem, which sounds funny for a main valley, but compared to, say, Yosemite Valley.
Fewer crowds.
Significantly fewer crowds, but still that jaw-dropping Yosemite-like scenery. You've got these massive granite cliffs like North Dome and Grand Sentinel towering over the Kings River. It's gorgeous and, yeah, surprisingly tranquil.
Nice. Grandeur without the chaos. I like that. And you can go underground, too.
Yep. Boyden Cavern. It's a marble cave right off Highway 180 between Grant Grove and Cedar Grove. They run guided tours, usually May to October. You get to see all the classic cave stuff, stalactites, stalagmites.
Cool. So big trees, stunning canyon, cool cave. It sounds like the park offers this great mix of really big iconic sites, but also maybe a slightly less intense commercialized vibe than some other big parks.
I think that's a fair assessment. It balances grandeur and solitude really well.
Okay, let's talk trails and vistas. Whether you want a scenic drive or a deep backcountry hike, what are the options?
For driving, the General's Highway is key. It connects Kings Canyon and Sequoia, winding up through the foothills into the giant groves. Lots of pullouts with amazing views, like Amphitheater Point. Just be aware there are vehicle length restrictions on parts of it, especially for RVs and trailers.
Good tip. And the drive down into Kings Canyon itself.
That's the Kings Canyon Scenic Byway, Highway 180. It's a really dramatic descent. The views just keep getting better as you drop into the canyon. Plenty of places to stop. Junction View, Yucca Point, Grizzly Falls.
Grizzly Falls, easy to see.
Super easy. It's like a 0.1-mile walk right off the highway to this really impressive waterfall. Nice place to cool off. The road continues all the way to, well, Road's End.
Any other quick scenic drives or viewpoints?
Yeah, near the Kings Canyon Visitor Center, there's Panoramic Point Road, offers nice views out towards Hume Lake. And if you're planning a bigger trip, people talk about the Majestic Mountain Loop, a suggested 3-day drive connecting Sequoia, Kings Canyon, and Yosemite.
What about hitting the trails? Day hikes, pretty straightforward.
Mostly, yeah. You usually don't need permits for day hikes in areas like Cedar Grove, the Foothills, Grant Grove, or even Giant Forest over in Sequoia. Lots of options. The main exception is if you're tackling something huge like Mount Whitney, but that's a whole different beast.
And for disappearing into the wilderness for a few days. Backpacking.
Definitely an option, but you absolutely need a wilderness permit for overnight stays, and you got to get those reservations way in advance, especially for summer, through recreation.gov.
And safety is key back there.
Hugely important. The park website has detailed trail info, but the big thing is proper food storage. Bear canisters are usually required. It's not just bears, marmots, squirrels. They'll get into anything not properly stored. Protects wildlife and your food.
It sounds like the park really thinks about managing access. Scenic drives for broad views, shuttles for crowded spots, permits for deep wilderness.
Exactly. They use the scenic drives and pullouts to let lots of people experience the park. Then, in peak season, those free hop-on, hop-off shuttles in busy areas like Grant Grove really help manage traffic and parking, which can get crazy. And the wilderness permit system helps limit impact in the backcountry. It's all about balancing visitor enjoyment with protecting the place.
What about activities beyond the usual hiking and sightseeing? Anything for specific seasons or interests?
Well, winter's a whole different experience. If you like snow, there's cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, areas for just playing in the snow, and some scenic drives stay open, offering, beautiful snowy vistas.
Any other options?
Sure. Horseback riding is allowed on many trails. Rock climbing is popular, though climbers need to check for annual closures. Sometimes routes are closed to protect nesting birds or other resources. With the California fishing license, of course.
Anything currently off limits?
Yeah, one important note right now, the road to Crystal Cave is still closed due to significant storm damage from previous years. So cave tours there aren't happening for the time being. Always good to check current conditions.
Okay, this is the part I'm really interested in, and I bet you are too if you're looking to escape the main crowds. Let's talk best-kept secrets. Getting off the beaten path in Kings Canyon.
Right. This is where you find that extra layer of solitude and maybe some unique views. While the main groves like General Grant are amazing, there are quieter ways to experience the sequoias.
Tell us more. Where should people look?
Okay, one great option is the North Grove. It's surprisingly close to the busy General Grant area, but the 1.7-mile loop trail feels much more peaceful. You get right up close to massive sequoias without the bustle. Takes maybe an hour, hour and a half.
Nice. A quiet, giant experience.
Exactly. Another one, if you're up for more of a hike, is Muir Grove. It's more tucked away, definitely quieter, a real serene alternative. And honestly, like we said, Cedar Grove itself, despite being the main canyon destination, still feels surprisingly uncrowded compared to similar spots in other big parks. Great for solitude among those huge cliffs.
What about viewpoints that fly under the radar?
Mineral King is a classic example, technically in Sequoia, but part of the whole Seki complex. It's this high valley, about 7,500 feet, and it's a base camp for hikes into absolutely pristine alpine lake country. Far fewer people venture up there.
Any shorter hikes with big payoffs but fewer people?
In Cedar Grove, check out the trail to Sheep Creek Cascade. It's a nice hike up a ravine to a cool, shady spot with a small waterfall and views of the Monarch Divide. Another one over in Sequoia, but worth mentioning, is Little Baldy Dome. It's less famous than Mora Rock, but offers similar stunning 360-degree views from a granite summit.
Anything specific within Kings Canyon proper?
Buena Vista Peak is a fantastic short hike, just about a mile each way, I think. And the payoff is huge, spectacular views over Redwood Canyon and deep into the Kings Canyon high country. For something like the Morrow Rock view, but potentially quieter, try Eagle View in Giant Forest, gives you that amazing bird's eye perspective.
And that super easy one you mentioned earlier.
Grizzly Falls, right off Highway 180. It's barely a walk, like 0.1 miles, but it's a seriously impressive waterfall. Great quick stop.
The sources also mentioned looking at old logging remnants is a different kind of insight.
Yeah, that's a cool angle. Seeing things like the Mark Twain stump or walking through the fallen monarch or looking at the Centennial stump where they cut a cross-section for an exhibition, it really gives you a visceral sense of how enormous these trees were and the scale of the logging that happened. It connects you to that history.
So the theme here seems to be, these secrets aren't always hidden deep in the wilderness. Sometimes they're just slightly off the main path, requiring a little extra attention. But the reward is that sense of peace, quiet, and a more personal connection. Plus, exploring these spots helps spread people out, which is good for the park, too.
Absolutely. It encourages that deeper exploration beyond just the main attractions.
Okay, Kings Canyon isn't stuck in time. It's actively managed, facing challenges. What's happening now, and what does the future look like?
A huge focus is adaptive fire management. Like we talked about, getting fire back into the ecosystem is critical for Sequoia health. It's a big shift from just putting all fires out. This involves a lot of science monitoring and planned prescribed burns.
And dealing with the aftermath of recent big fires.
Yes, there's ongoing recovery work and some area closures still in effect from the 2021 KNP complex and Windy fires. You have to check for those.
How do they approach managing the vast wilderness areas? You mentioned this specific concept.
Right, the minimum requirement concept. It guides any actions taken in designated wilderness. Basically, if they need to do something, maintain a trail, monitor wildlife, deal with invasive species, they have to choose the method that has the least impact on wilderness character and natural conditions.
Even if it's harder, more expensive.
Exactly. Protecting the wilderness resource itself comes first. It's a really important principle.
And climate change is obviously a huge factor.
It's recognized as probably the biggest long-term threat. We see it in the shrinking glaciers, changes in river flows, snowpack. The park is actively researching this, trying to understand drought impacts on sequoias, monitoring changes in alpine zones.
And the bighorn sheep recovery fits into this too.
Yeah, that's a prime example of the intensive, long-term commitment needed to help species adapt and survive in the face of these changes. It's science-driven management in action.
So they're actively adapting. What about practical updates for visitors right now? Road closures seem like a big one.
They are. Several roads are still closed from major storm damage in recent years. Middle Fork Road, Redwood Canyon, South Fork, and the Crystal Cave Road we mentioned. Mineral King Road also often has construction delays. The bottom line is, you must check the official park website for current conditions right before your trip. Things can change quickly.
Any cool events people should know about?
The annual Dark Sky Festival is a great one. Kings Canyon has incredibly dark night skies, perfect for stargazing. For 2025, it's scheduled for September 12th to 14th.
And finally, visitor safety. What are the key things people need to remember?
Bears are definitely present. Proper food storage using bear-proof containers is mandatory in many areas, and always keep vehicle windows closed. And the rivers, they can be extremely dangerous, especially during spring and early summer snowmelt. They're swift and incredibly cold.
There was a recent incident mentioned.
Yes, tragically, a visitor was swept away in May 2025. It's a terrible reminder to be extremely cautious around the water. Don't underestimate it.
These updates and warnings are crucial. The park is wild, it's dynamic, and sometimes that means closures or hazards. Being prepared and informed is absolutely key for a safe and responsible visit.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, let's wrap up with the nuts and bolts, the essential info you need for planning your visit. Getting in, getting around.
Right. First off, entrance fees. You need a pass. The standard one is $35 per vehicle, good for 7 days in both Kings Canyon and Sequoia.
Or their annual options.
Yep. A specific Sequoia Kings Canyon annual pass is $70. Or the America the Beautiful Pass is $80, gets you into all national parks for a year. That's usually the best deal if you visit multiple parks.
And discounts or free passes are available too.
Yeah, there are free passes for current military, veterans, Gold Star families, people with permanent disabilities, that's the Access Pass, and for U.S. fourth graders and their families for a year. Plus, discounted annual and lifetime passes for seniors 62 and older. Good to know they prefer cashless payments at the gates now.
Where's the best place to get info once you're in the park?
Head to a visitor center. There's the main Kings Canyon VC in Grant Grove, a seasonal one down in Cedar Grove, plus others in the foothills and lodgepole areas over in Sequoia. They have maps, exhibits, bookstores, and, most importantly, the latest info on road conditions, trails, weather, and safety. Always make that your first stop.
How about getting around, driving tips?
Driving is the main way, yeah.
Yeah.
But brace yourself for winding roads, especially the General's Highway. If you get carsick, plan ahead. And fill up your gas tank before you enter the park. Gas stations inside are very limited, like just one at Hume Lake, which is kind of out of the way. And remember those vehicle length advisories?
And the shuttles for busy times.
Right. During peak summer weekends, they run free shuttles in popular spots like Grant Grove and Giant Forest. They're great free, no tickets needed, just hop on and off. Helps a ton with parking. There's also an external shuttle from Visalia, but that one needs reservations and costs money.
Last big thing, lodging and camping.
Book way, way ahead, especially for summer. Lodges and campgrounds fill up months in advance. Reservations are highly recommended, pretty much essential.
And for backpacking.
Same deal for wilderness permits. Get those reservations on recreation.gov as soon as they become available. And check campground status. The sources mentioned Lodgepole might have limited spots, and Dorse Creek is closed for 2025. And please, please use the bear boxes correctly at campsites. Keep a clean camp, all these practical details. They might seem boring, but knowing this stuff really empowers your visit. It keeps you safe, helps you minimize your impact, and makes the whole trip smoother. Responsible tourism starts with being informed.
Absolutely. So we've journeyed pretty deep today, haven't we? From the immense geological timescales and the thousands of years of indigenous history, through those crucial battles for preservation, right up to the park as it exists now, this dynamic living place. We've touched on the giant trees, the dramatic canyons, the diverse life.
And hopefully given you some solid tips for visiting, including finding those quieter spots, those best-kept secrets.
Yeah. The sources really emphasize that Kings Canyon isn't just a pretty picture. It's this evolving landscape under constant stewardship, facing real challenges like climate change.
And its future really relies on ongoing science, continued conservation work, and honestly on responsible visitors like you engaging with it thoughtfully.
We really hope this deep dive has given you a wealth of information, maybe a few aha moments, and a clearer sense of why this place is just so special, whether you're now planning that trip or just learning its story from afar.
It is fascinating, isn't it, to think about a place shaped over millions of years, managed sustainably for thousands, now changing faster than ever because of us.
It leads to that final thought, doesn't it? What role do you play? Just by visiting, by learning, by caring. What responsibility comes with appreciating a place of such immense scale and history, especially now? How do we help ensure its majesty endures?
Definitely something to think about long after you leave the park, or even just finish listening.
Indeed.